Join Granada as we see out 1995 on New Year's Eve. You'll be dancing in the street with an all-new You've Been Framed, or stay in with Poirot and a good book.
All we need to know now is how it got here.
And what the big film is later.
My husband was killed if you know what I was doing.
Swing Shift. Bring down the house on New Year's Eve, here on Granada.
In 10 minutes' time, we bring you the region's top stories with Granada News. But first, we join ITN in London.
From the studios of ITN, the news with Anya Sitaram.
Good evening, welcome to the programme. Tonight's main news. Bombshell for Major as a second Tory MP defects. A supermarket attacker stabs 10. The government's been plunged into crisis tonight by the defection of another of its backbench MPs. Emma Nicholson's decision to join the Liberal Democrats means the government's Commons majority is cut to 3. With 2 by-elections pending, it could soon be down to 1, making a 1996 general election increasingly likely. The MP for Devon West and Torridge blamed her move on the government's indecision, weak leadership on Europe and neglect of the British people. Here's our political correspondent, Adrian Britton.
It is a defection which strikes at the heart of the Tory party. A Conservative MP considered hard-working and loyal. Emma Nicholson was even a former party vice-chairman, keen to represent Britain on overseas visits. But beneath that loyalty, simmerings of discontent, particularly over Europe.
It is my view that the Conservative Party has changed, that in recent years we have drifted far, far away from being the one nation Tory party that I joined, I promoted, and I worked so hard for nearly all of my life as a child and as an adult too. I find those values are now embraced in the Liberal Democrat Party. That's therefore where I've got to be. But I don't join a party for the sake of a party. I join a party for the values that it conceptualises and wishes to promote.
But as to the defining moment which has made her cross the parliamentary floor, it wasn't Europe, it wasn't party morale.
I believe that the final straw for me was actually pregnant women in Holloway Prison, shackled in chains.
Before tonight, there was a majority of 7 Conservative MPs, but one, Sir Richard Boddy, is refusing the whip, effectively reducing it to 5. And if the government loses 2 pending by-elections, it'll be cut further to 3. Emma Nicholson's defection tonight means it'll possibly be down to 1 in the new year.
I think Emma Nicholson's move is a decisive blow to John Major's government and a demonstration of how crucial will be the role of the Liberal Democrats in getting rid of it and replacing it.
And so soon after the defection of Tory MP Alan Howarth to Labour, this is a double blow to John Major.
John Major and his government are going to continue to carry out the right policies for Britain for the full term of a Conservative government. We're not going to be deflected by Emma Nicholson.
Neither Downing Street nor Tory Central Office had warning of this defection. For John Major, it makes his wish for an election in '97 all the more difficult. Adrian Britton, ITN, Central London.
Live now to our political editor, Mike. It's a big boost to the Lib Dems, but how big a blow is it to the Tories?
Oh, it's absolutely enormous. It's a really devastating blow. Think of what it does to party morale as they thought that they were just picking themselves up, looking forward to a good year and a run-up to a '97 election. I've talked to a couple of members of the Cabinet tonight. You can hear the dejection in their voices, even though they say, well, we'll carry on with a minority government if we have to. But it really is quite devastating. And of course the knives are now well and truly out for Emma Nicholson. One of those cabinet members I spoke to tonight spoke of unbelievable treachery. How could she possibly do such a thing? The other stories coming out too about the way she had actually gone and asked Michael Heseltine what her chances were for a job in government and been told they weren't very good. The suggestion that she was bearing a grudge.
Does this increase the chances of an early general election?
I think it does. You saw the arithmetic that we set out, and there is this real chance of the government's majority being reduced officially to overall majority of 1. Now, it was 1 vote that you remember that sank the Labour government in 1979. 1 vote majorities are very, very difficult. They're so dangerous. what you're going to say about the Ulster Unionists. Well, yes, in theory, they would probably want to support a Conservative government rather than throw it overboard at the moment. But don't forget that in the vital fish vote just before Christmas, the Unionists did their own thing. This is very, very dangerous territory for the government, in my view. They're on very, very thin ice.
Michael Brunson, thank you. 10 people were injured today when a supermarket worker ran wild, stabbing staff and customers at a Birmingham store. 3 of the victims were seriously hurt, 8 are still in hospital. Police are tonight questioning a man about the incident. Our Midlands reporter Eric McInnes has the details.
It was lunchtime. The supermarket was busy with shoppers when a young part-time shelf stacker began stabbing staff and customers indiscriminately. He'd had a row at work, then just snapped.
Everybody was running all over the place. People was terrified, there was. And then seeing all the blood, it upset my stomach.
You just actually just stood at the checkout, were you?
Yeah, I was putting my thing away when the man just appeared in front of me with his knife and he just stabbed the man in front of me and I ran and hid.
As terrified shoppers and staff fled, the attacker casually walked out and headed down the road.
The offender ran from the scene and was chased by a security guard into a side street. A member of the public went to his assistance and he was also stabbed.
These 2 police officers made an arrest a quarter of a mile from the supermarket. They were aided by this man. By tragic coincidence, his 13-year-old son was one of the attacker's victims.
Yeah, I was ducked down behind the cars because I seen the police running down the road to try and get him. And as I went for him, he caught me and he tried to stab me in the chest.
His son had been stabbed in the arm while waiting outside the supermarket.
They were coming in and out, and then, well, as soon as I got stabbed, then the bloke started running off, and the security officer went after him.
The supermarket has now been closed for further forensic examination. 3 people are still seriously ill in hospital with stab wounds. 1 has a punctured lung. Detectives say the injuries could have been much worse had the weather not been so cold. Many victims were wearing heavy coats. Eric McInnes, ITN, Birmingham.
Within the last few minutes, detectives have confirmed a body found in a lay-by near Worcester is that of the missing French teenager Céline Figard. The naked body was discovered earlier today, almost 100 miles from where Céline was last seen hitching a lift from a lorry driver. The grieving families of 2 men who died trying to rescue a young girl from an icy Yorkshire lake today paid tribute to them. The widow of fireman Michael Mee said her husband was a wonderful, brave man. Here's our North of England correspondent, Steve Scott.
At the scene of yesterday's tragedy, council staff removed the tarpaulin used during heroic attempts to rescue 11-year-old Tracy Patterson when she plunged through the ice. Onlooker Jack Crawshaw crawled across the surface after watching off-duty fire officer Michael Mee follow Tracy into the water, but he too crashed in. His family are proud of his bravery, but devastated it cost him his life.
He's an enemy in the world. He'd do anything for you. His 2 nephews and a niece, which he absolutely adored, and they adored him. Family, everybody just loved him.
Tracy's best friend today spoke for all who knew her.
Well, I was thinking that I wish she came back alive and that.
Michael Mee's colleagues say although he paid the ultimate sacrifice, his actions were only what they'd have expected.
I feel he may have been compelled to have done something, but Mick will have been aware of the jeopardy he was placing himself in, and as I said earlier, that part of his unselfish attitude, he would have accepted the dangers and gone ahead with it.
Such was their respect and affection for him here. They say his place on Whitewatch will be impossible to fill. At the lake where they gave their lives, Jack Crawshaw and Michael Mee's heroism is remembered. So too the life of a little girl cut short by her determination to save a dog from drowning. Steve Scott, ITN, Yorkshire.
Boris Yeltsin returned to work today for the first time after his heart attack and immediately hinted at his future ambitions. The 64-year-old Russian president told voters in Moscow he may well run again for the presidency.